Oliver from Rugby League, in my opinion, here, joined today by a very special guest, David Liddiard, former player here in Australia and England. You've played for a few clubs in both continents, and of course, someone who has now gone on to do a lot of great work in the Indigenous community, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. But first of all, David, how are you today?
Pretty good, thanks, Oliver. It's been 40 years since I signed with the Eels, and I turned 60 this year. Like a lot of the boys that I played with, they're getting old, and I'm about to go in and have my second knee replacement. So I probably should have played table tennis. I'd have sore wrists instead of rugby league, but I loved playing that sport and still enjoy watching it today.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. We were talking a bit off camera about how you still catch up with, as you call it, the Queensland chapter of the Parramatta Eels side that you used to play with. I believe you guys caught up for a bit of a reunion on Friday night, went to Seabus to watch the boys defeat the Gold Coast Titans.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about how that night was and what you do with those blokes.
Oh, mate, it was really great. Like I said, those boys, we have sort of we have a WhatsApp with the Eels boys that I played with in the 80s, Guru and Zip and Brett Kenny and all those guys. Sounds like I'm name dropping, but I did play footy with those blokes, and we stayed mates for 40 odd years, and we talk very often, and sadly COVID has stopped us for the last couple of years of having a reunion. We used to, when Jack was around and Ron Massey, we had reunions down on the Central Coast, and we all come, and now it's just Peter Wynn organises it, and in November we go to Surfers Paradise for 3 or 4 days. We usually pick a charity or someone contacts us and we raise money for homeless people or kids with autism or whatever charity it is, and we go to the Kira Hotel and we get some jerseys signed and we raffle them, and all the money raised goes to the charity. So we try and do some really good things. It's just, I'm really, humbled by that people still remember me 40 years on from my career, which is, lost all my hair and and getting old. So that's what happens. But no, we're still in constant contact with all the lads. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, you talk about your hair. I was going through last night to have a look at some of your old images to pick one out for the graphic, and you did have quite a nice hairdo going on there. The nice jet black hair, eh?
And curls as well. So yes, it was very, very. I tried to grow it in COVID when first COVID arrived, and I said to my wife, "Oh, look at this! How good's my hair looking?" And she goes, "You can't see the back of your head. You got a big bald spot at the back." And I said, "Shave it off." So that's where it's at. As people will see now, I shave it regularly. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. We'll get into your career now. I guess first we'll talk about the lead in to your career a little bit. Obviously, making your debut for the Parramatta Eels in 1983. But tell us a bit about before that, who you played for growing up, and sort of how you ended up at the Eels.
Yeah, so I played for a club in Western Sydney called Collerton Colts, and I'd heard that the Eels had sent. I was a Penrith junior, so I'd always go up to the Panthers and try and get a start there. My father was a bit of a fitness still. He's 86, so not as nimble as he used to be, but he used to train a lot of the old ex-footballers. Sadly, we lost Ray Blacklock, who played against the Eels on the wing for Newtown. Ray's my first cousin, so I'm related to the Blacklocks, and so we used to train in the backyard. So I've always been into the fitness side of things. And I'd heard that this fellow called Billy Rayner, who played for Australia, was a talent scout for the Eels, had been out to look at one of my games. And the next day I get a phone call from Jack Gibson and Dennis Fitzgerald, and I thought it was a G-up. And I'm not going to swear on your podcast, but I told Jack to nick off. Yep. He just said, "Boy, Lydia, bring your boots back, Cumberland Oval at 5 o'clock on Tuesday." And I went, "Nick off, who's this?" I thought it was a G-up. And then Dennis Fitzgerald grabbed the phone and said, "Oh, David, it's Dennis Fitzgerald from the Eels." I said, "Oh, please tell me that wasn't Jack Gibson." And he goes, they thought it was funny, thank God.
Yep.
But, I walked into the dressing room on that Tuesday at Cumberland Oval before it got burnt down, and was the who's who in there getting ready for training, and I'd signed a contract, and, and that was in 1981. I was 19 years old, and started playing in the under-23s that weekend. And then the Panthers sort of contacted me and said, we want you up on the bench for first grade for the Panthers. And I said, I've already signed with the Eels. And so I handed that over to Dennis, and Dennis took care of it. And, I signed and hung out with the Eels for a few years, which was fantastic to meet and play with the sort of blokes that I had the opportunity to play with. Like you said, in 1983, it was a pretty good year for me.
Yeah, well, obviously you go on to win Dally M Rookie of the Year. I'm really interested to get your take on how you were sort of able to break into that team and have that good a season in 83, because we look at the Dally M Rookie of the Year winners of recent years, and usually they come from clubs sort of lower down on the table, a hot young rookie coming into the side and making a big impact. But you'd have to think back then, with Parramatta being back-to-back defending premiers who would go on to win their third straight premiership in 1983, to not only break into that side, but to have a season worthy of winning Rookie of the Year. How do you think you were able to do that?
I think I was really fortunate to, obviously, we had a lot of blokes coming through the ranks that were decent footballers, but, when you name a side like Paul Taylor, Eric Groth, Neil Hunt, Steve Ella, Mick Cronin, Brett Kenny, Peter Sterling, Ray Price, Peter Wynn, it goes on and on. Like, they were a gun side, and I think a lot of the boys didn't think they were ever going to get a shot. But Jack used to get us all together. We all trained as one unit, third grade, reserve grade, and first grade. And so he did that because if someone got hurt, we sort of had an idea of what was going to happen. We were training together. He was a very, very smart guy, and I used to love running. Not so much now. I've had a knee replacement, and I'm about to go and have my second one in a couple of weeks. But I used to have a mad sprint coach who trained Olympic athletes. So I used to do a lot of hard work. I'd go to training and train before we trained, basically, So that's what my work ethic was like, and I still, to this day, get up and go to the gym and train. So we used to have these time trials called 8-lap time trials, and I used to lap blokes. So Jack gave me the opportunity. I think one of the boys got injured from fullback, so I slotted in there, and all you need to do is run off Brett Kenny or Mick Cronin, and they always get the ball away to you. And and I was pretty quick in those days. I used to run around big front rowers. So I think I just had a pretty amazing year, and I was really surprised and shocked to be awarded the Dally M. I picked up a couple of other awards along the way, and I think the week before, the Channel 9 come out and filmed me getting out of bed and having breakfast with my family and all that sort of stuff. It was stuff I wasn't used to, and got picked up to do some, not now, but back then I was younger and had good hair. I did some modelling and all that sort of stuff, which was interesting, and way out of my comfort zone. But those are the sort of things that happen to you when like I was still shocked and to sign autographs for people. You'd walk in the ground and people would come and ask you for your autograph. It's something you're just not used to, but you do it because they like watching you play, and it was exciting for me, and hopefully it made their day as well.
Yeah, well, David, you bring up your work ethic and your speed back in the day, which leads in perfectly to a question I wanted to ask that my old man actually brought up to me last night when he saw that I was interviewing you. So I've already forgotten, but he claims to know someone who knew your dad. And the stories sort of come down the grapevine that apparently you used to jog to train, and then jog back to the pub afterwards and have a water or lemonade with the boys and then jog back home. Is this true?
I did some people have probably call it dumb things, but I'd run from Penrith to Parramatta to for fitness and stuff like that. I was always on the road. I was always, when I had good legs. I've never had legs. I'm Aboriginal, obviously, so they're very skinny. And but they used to carry me around, and I loved it. So I've done Blue Mountain runs through the. I was never going to be into marathon running. I didn't like running like 42 kilometres, but I used to sprint the 10K fun runs. A guy called Rob Rowland Smith, the Sandhill Warrior. He was our trainer at the Eels at the time. They gave me a nickname called the Black Prince. So he'd turn up at this fun run and go, "I got you, Black Prince." So I love that sort of stuff, I was just always competitive and it was just it's in me. I still try and have a jog now with one bad knee and one about to be replaced in 2 weeks. So I think my running career is over. But back in the day, that's what I did. And I lived with Sterlo for a couple of seasons, and Sterlo would sleep until 1:30, go across the road and get Red Rooster for lunch, watch Days of Our Lives. I'd be in the back room doing push-ups, chin-ups and, doing road runs, and he'd shake his head at me, like we'd go and have pancakes at Parramatta. And but he was a freak as well on the field. Unbelievable. He has a crack at my legs. Have you seen these legs lately? Like he's bow-legged fella. Anyway.
Well, I tell you what, as someone else who's born and raised in Penrith as well, I've tried doing the Lapston Steps or whatever, which is in the Blue Mountains, and it's a struggle for me to walk that, let alone try and run from Penrith to Parramatta. So definitely admirable what you were doing, and I suppose you end up having a pretty good rugby league career, and all of that work would have certainly helped. Look. 1983, you guys would obviously go on to win the premiership, your second straight premiership against Manly that the club had won, third in a row. 84 comes along. That streak then comes to an end, although you did get to defend the title on the big stage against Canterbury Bankstown. Now, what did you take out of that one? Because we've spoken about the good season, 83, the Rookie of the Year. You won the combat year. I've now got to go to a somber year, if you will.
100%, yeah. So we obviously Jack, and we got John Money has stepped up from reserve grade to first grade. Jack moved on, and look, I'd like to say we should have won that game. We lost Steve Ella early. I was on the bench and come on like in the first 10 or 18 minutes, whatever it was. I can't remember now, but losing a player like Zip, Steve Ella, who was an absolute freak. And it's just, it's hard to describe what the feeling was like when we pulled up on the team bus in 83 to walk into Parramatta Leagues Club to a phenomenal, I think nearly all of the Parramatta, everyone was at the club. It was like rock star status. It was unbelievable to turn it up in 84 being beat. It's a completely different feeling, but it's hard to really put, I don't know what went wrong. It was a very tight, close game. I think the score was 6-4 to my memory. I tried to forget it as I can. I've got a gold medallion for 83 and I've got a silver one, and I hate even looking at it. It makes me not feel great. But, like that's rugby league, it is what it is. So, you got to live with it. I think the boys went on to redeem themselves in 86, and I wasn't there for that grand final, but I was really glad that they did win it.
Yeah, so in 85, that'd be your last year at Parramatta, but you would have your first season over in England playing for Oldham. Tell us about how a move to England, or I really shouldn't say a move to England, because back in those days, wasn't it, you play rugby league over here in the winter, and a lot of boys would go over and play when it was their winter. Of course, now the Super League and NRL, they're aligned, so players can't do that anymore. But you did go have that first initial stint in England with Oldham. How did that come about, and what was your experience like living? I'll say in Oldham at first, and then we'll get to the whole clubs.
So I got a guy called Frank Myler, who was sadly lost, was the Great Britain coach and the coach for Oldham at the time when I was there. Come out and watched me play, and obviously offered me a contract. I took my youngest brother, Glenn, who was 10 years younger than me. He was 16 actually when he came over with me. I took my mum and dad over for a trip because they've never been overseas before. And, we had a really great season. I unfortunately had my jaw broken and had to have it wired up for 6 weeks. So I was out of action for a little bit. We were one game away from going to Wembley. We were pretty close to that. My couple of guys got hurt, so my youngest brother was playing. Glenn was playing like a third grade in the UK, and he was scoring like 10 tries a game. So yeah. Frank called him up at 16, and he got hurt when we were playing. I think it might have been Castleford or something like that in the semis to go to Wembley, and he went off at half time. I reckon if he stayed on, we would have won the game. But it was amazing being able to play with my brother, and what he did and what he achieved as well was pretty phenomenal. He played for Australian schoolboys and stuff, and went on to have a pretty good career himself. So Oldham was a phenomenal. And I'm still friends with a lot of people, fans. I don't even want to call them fans; they're my friends. But they still contact me. Like on through Facebook and all these different, social media types, and I'm still remembered by them, which is phenomenal. Like 30, I can't remember how many years ago, but it was a long time ago now.
Yeah. Well, once your little stint over in England with Oldham was over, you'd come back to Australia. You spoke before about how you were offered the chance to play first grade with Penrith initially back in '83. Well, you would actually go on to return home, I guess you could say, to Penrith and play for the Panthers in '86 and '87. How did that one come about?
I got a call from Tim Sheens. They were sadly a young bloke called Robbie Robarts passed away. He was their fullback, and I got the opportunity. And they offered me a decent contract to come up and play for them. My parents still live in the suburb out of Penrith called Warrington County.
Yeah. About 10 minutes from me.
There you go. So when I come down, we'll come and I'll shout you lunch.
Yeah.
Mick Cronin said, "Don't go. We're going to win another premiership." The money was good, and at my age, however old I was, there, I can't remember now, but it was too good to refuse, So I didn't, and I love the Crow. They're all my favourites, but I've got a soft spot for the Crow. But I ended up going and signing with the Panthers and got to play with some decent players, Greg Alexander, Roy Simmons, those guys, John Cartwright. They had a pretty decent side. Obviously, we didn't go on and win any grand finals, but I had a couple of good seasons there with those guys, and I don't regret it. I'm good mates with them. I live with a bloke called Matt Goodwin, who is West Wyalong boy and pretty tough country lad, and trained with him, and I don't regret. Obviously, it would have been nice to stay at the Eels and win the '86, but you can't cry over spilt milk, Oliver, can you? Really, at the end of the day. So
no, you can't. And well, I'll tell you what. You talk about your parents living in Warrington and coming back. Funnily enough, I'm on a weekly podcast that I don't personally run, but with a couple of mates. One of them's been doing it for a couple of years. And it's basically a weekly review preview show, usually for the NRL. And we've had the opportunity to go to, recently we went to Dan Payne's new book launch out there at Club Redfern. Yeah. But usually one of the places where we'll record every week is the Colonial at Warrington. So when you're down, you'll have to come down one time and jump on.
Well, that's funny because I've got a photo. Dan sent me a copy of the book, and he's right.
I saw that. Yeah,
he's writing the next version, and he's he's asked if I would let him interview me to go in the book, which I'm really honoured about. So yeah, he sent me a copy of the book, and I had a photo and sent it back. He probably would have seen it on Facebook or you guys pick things up. But yeah, so he's a lovely guy, and it's good to look back and read about some of the the stuff that we did back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to that next book coming out, and hopefully we get invited along to that to do a few interviews and have a beer with the old blokes then as well. But, you speak about, not crying over spilt milk and sort of wanting to stay at Parramatta and be there for that 86 grand final win. You would end up back at Parramatta for a small stint, 88,
Yeah.
89. I take it you obviously went back there because you wanted to stay there originally.
Yep.
But what was that second stint at the club like compared to the first? Obviously not as glamorous in terms of accolades and premierships, etc. But what did you take out of 88, 89?
Look, it had been amazing that I could have been a one-club player like Brett, who played all his career. Most of the blokes that played in those grand finals stayed and played their whole careers with the Eels. Again, 40 years on, you can't go back in time and go to make changes. Obviously, I didn't probably have the two best seasons in 88 and 89. They weren't anything outstanding for me. But I got back again to play with my brother, which was pretty cool. And, I remember one game, I used to love getting my shirt off at a point. Me and Steve Ella did an Indigenous round at Bank West with in the box, and we're sitting there, and Brett Kenny likes to spread vicious rumours about me about I love getting my shirt off because I love training, and I'm not fat like he is, and he's not fat, he's just chubby. And hopefully he won't watch this. But he said to the MC, I got a couple of stories for Lids, about Lids. So he told him, and we had Alan Jones in the audience, and John Barilalo, the Deputy Premier, who I'm friends with, and about 80 corporate heavyweights, and Dennis Fitzgerald was there, and the MC goes, "Oh, Brett Kenny's been spreading some rumours about you." And I said, "Oh, what's changed?" And he goes, "You love getting your shirt off and love showing your six pack." And I said, "Well, yes, I do love getting my shirt off, but he's got it wrong. I've got an 8-pack. So if you're going to get your story right, get it, tell it how it is." So everyone was cracking up, and I said, if the blokes leave the room, I'll get my shirt up and I can show you my 8-pack, So it was a funny type of interview. And that's the sort of thing with these blokes. Like, these guys played in 5 grand finals, are phenomenal, and they are the most humble, down-to-earth blokes that it's hard to really put into words what sort of guys they are, because we've been together for such a long time, had so many amazing experiences, and I just feel very fortunate to have played in that team with those guys and can call them friends. Like, that footy career started my journey into the Aboriginal space, which was, had the grand final medal presented to me in '83 by Bob Hawke, who sadly has passed away now, but Bob was really close to, and his Sport and Tourism Minister, John Brown, who it's like my second father. I speak to him regularly. So, it's been, even though I'm going through a bit of dramas with my body in relation to surgeries and that, I've had ankle reconstruction, shoulders, knee replacements. I've got to get another knee. I've got severe sleep apnea because I broke my nose 7 times. It was tough on the old body, but I would not change it.
Yeah, well, you talk about those blokes being so down to earth and that. You've actually just reminded me of another quick story about the man who you were talking about, Brett Kenny. I would have been about 9 or 10, so this is at least a decade ago, and I'm not sure if you've been there before, but the Aqua Golf down by Panthers at
No.
Penrith. I was there hitting a few balls, probably terribly, and I came out and Brett Kenny and Max Krilich were there having a swing, and I went up just to say hello, and Brett goes, "I've just won a free basket of golf balls. You have them." So he gave them to me, and I got his free basket. So hey, there you go.
That's Brett. My brother, because of COVID, he runs the Indigenous program for the Panthers.
Yep.
And he now puts some hours into that aqua golf club, so I know it very well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Brett all over. Brett would give you the shirt off his back. He's just that type of bloke, Like he's been. If we rang Brett now and got him on a call, I'll go, "Hey, Bert, how you travelling?" And he go, "I'm reasonable." And he's been saying he's reasonable for like 40 years now. So
yeah,
he's a funny man.
Yeah, so not too good, not too bad, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going back over to the UK now. Seems like we're starting to go back and forth for the 89-90 season with Hull FC. If you're watching this on YouTube, the team whose jersey I'm currently wearing.
I love it. It's a good jersey.
Yeah,
it didn't look like that when I was playing.
The pink and the black.
Yeah,
I think this is the away jersey from, it was either last year or the year before.
Right.
I got to pick that up. But anyway, yeah, so your time at Hull FC, 89-90, what was it like in Hull? Obviously, you'd go back to Hull, but not necessarily the black and whites when you'd go there later, but the city of Hull, what was it like there, and how did you find your experience at the mighty black and whites, as they're called?
Well, I loved being in Hull. I got a phone call from a guy called Brian Smith, who coached the Eels and Illawarra Steelers, I think, at some point, or Illawarra, or whatever they call themselves these days. I was fortunate enough that I'd only taken 3 imports at the time. So it was me, Crusher Cleal, and a lovely bloke by the name of Steve Folkes, who played for the Bulldogs, who sadly we've lost. So I got to play 8 or 10 games, and I was leading try scorer for the club, and a guy called Ronnie Gibbs, who played for the Roosters and played for Manly, he was playing in one of the sides over there. I can't remember which one it was, might have been Castleford or whatever, but he used to tackle the kicker and take the knee out, basically, and he broke our halfback's knee, and we didn't have a halfback, and I was about 9 games in, and they had a guy called Greg Mackey, who played under Brian Smith in Australia, was up for contract or something, and they agreed to have a contract with him, and basically because I don't know the reason why, but that was the end of my stint with Hull FC. So I ended up coming home, and I had a meeting with the Bulldogs. When they heard I was home, I got contacted from the Bulldogs, and I got contacted from the Sea Eagles. And I never thought ever I'd play for Manly, because Manly and Parramatta, obviously back in the 80s, were, and that's what Parramatta Eels supporters used to do. I mean, growl like you just did. Go, why would you go and play with bloody Manly? Sorry, but Graham Lowe seemed like a really good guy. They gave me a 3-year contract, and they were a pretty decent side, and I'm really good mates with the Manly boys as well, like I am with the Penrith boys. The State of Origin, we're just up at where I am, up in Casuarina at Salt, it's called, and they were staying here, and I'm 3 minutes drive from them. And I was at the gym, and these 2 boys that I trained with said, "Can we get photos with Brad Fittler?" And so I text Freddie, and he was happy to let us come up. And my brother looks after the Panthers boys, and To'o, I think he pronounced his name, and the 5'8", Lulai, were in the camp. I got caught up. I'm a Biripi fella, and Latrell is from Taree. He's a Biripi Aboriginal lad, and that I yarned to him. And Josh had a car, so I caught up with Brandy, Greg Alexander, who was there. So yeah, it was really nice catching up with all the boys before they went up there and flogged Queensland. And so yeah, it was. I don't even know why I'm telling you that story now, Oliver.
No,
I don't know what it was leading into, but
yeah. Well, I saw the photos on your Facebook page. I saw you got a few photos with them. So
yeah, and they're really good fellas, really nice. They pumped my brother up because the Panthers. I think they're just having an amazing season, and it'd be nice to, I'm torn between the Eels and the Panthers, obviously. So yeah. But Manly was good. I had 3 great years at Manly, made some phenomenal friends, and that's what's so great about rugby league. I think if, with the head concussions and the knocks and what's going on now with these new rules, I think we'll be playing touch football or something next 20 years. I don't know if they'll have a contact sport because I don't know. That's what it is. It's rugby league. It's contact. So, you're sometimes going to get accidentally knocked around the head or knocked out, and you can't keep sending players off for it because that's the sport, So it's a bit controversial, and I won't want to bore people to death with that sort of stuff.
No, well, I suppose it's sort of about finding that middle ground because it's important to protect the head and keep people healthy, but there's also got to be where you draw a line where I guess we can't necessarily be sending players off for every single higher tackle. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with that.
What's this space? I say it's going to be interesting. So
yeah. So anyway, after your time at Manly, you'd go back over to England. Now, remember, you did play for Hull FC, as we brought up. So I'm trying to think of any other club, any club that you probably shouldn't go to. Only one comes to mind, and that's exactly the club that you went to upon your return to England, the Robins, Hull Kingston Rovers.
Rovers, yes.
First thing I want to ask, was there much backlash from the Hull FC faithful when you signed for Hull KR? You think Manly and Para's bad? Well, I can only imagine.
Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Yep. I've got a son in Hull who's now 30, and I met a lovely lady in England when I was playing for Hull FC.
Yeah.
And we were great friends, and she had my son, Josh, and I mainly went back over to, it's been 2 years. I hadn't seen him or met him, and I wanted to meet my son. So I flew over. Hull KR heard I was in town. They hooked up a meeting. They said that I was ready to pull the pin, basically.
Yeah.
I was more or less after Manly. I thought that was it. I was getting on, and I got a really nice offer and a car and a house, and I thought, well, I'll stay here for a couple of seasons and get to hang out with my son, and which I did. So I signed, and didn't I get some grief? So they are so competitive, those two, East Hull and Hull FC. It was interesting. It's like me leaving the Eels and signing with Manly, and people used to boo me and call me lots of choice names that I won't talk about on this podcast. But it was. But they're passionate. I've got the most. I love it because we've got passionate people who love their teams, and there's nothing wrong with that, So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it was last year before the whole shutdown and the lockdown due to COVID, but I was watching the Hull FC versus Hull KR game over there, and it was a packed out stadium. And funnily enough, you brought him up before. They had it on Sky Sports. Their special guest Sterlo had actually flown over there to catch up with a few of the old Hull FC boys, and they actually had him on the broadcast and that. So it goes to show, I guess, not only over there. The legends and the players who have played for these historic clubs and I guess been a part of that rivalry, but over here too, guys like yourself and Sterlo, for example. And of course, there are players who have had careers in the NRL who have since gone over and are currently playing there. The rivalry lives on, I guess you could say.
100%. Like I watched something come up on my phone the other day where Brett Kenny was playing for Wigan, and he was playing Sterlo in a
Challenge Cup.
Challenge Cup, yeah. So Brett carved him up. It was phenomenal. No one understood him. Brett used to just walk out onto the ground, very casual. Like people used to think, what's going on with this bloke? Like he just, but that was Brett. That was just what his style was like. Like he had his thing, and if you didn't know it, people would be going, something wrong with him or what? But he should have played. We used to warm up and play cricket before we trained, and Brett's hand-eye coordination was phenomenal. Like, I've watched his highlight reels where he's taken intercepts and it's just phenomenal hands. What he could do, it was amazing. Well, and this podcast is not about Brett Kenny, so let's not talk about Brett Kenny.
Well, that's what I was going to say. At this point, I'll probably have to get him to come on, but talk about you. I have to do the reverse and see if he can get me another basket of golf balls down at Aqua Golf.
I'll send you his details. You can give him a call.
Yeah, but I'll tell him he can only come on if he talks about you, though. That's the important thing.
He'll just say, I'm reasonable.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So, look, after your career with Hull KR, we alluded to it a bit before, but you've since gone on to be heavily involved, I'd say, in the Indigenous community. So when you got back from England, I believe this is when you were a part of NASCAR, the foundation of NASCAR. Tell us a bit about that.
Not the car. Not the car.
No.
Yeah, it's NASCAR, NASCA, the National Aboriginal Sporting Chance Academy. Yeah. So that acronym stands for giving Aboriginal kids a sporting chance, because I had mine through sport. So I thought when I was playing, I used to get invited to go into Aboriginal communities to do presentation nights and talk to Aboriginal youth and all that sort of stuff. And I could see how tough a lot of communities were doing it. And I just thought, you know what, I want to do something through, not that I had a big name, I wasn't no big superstar or anything like that, but I did have a name, and I had an amazing group of people around me. I was adopted by Lend-Lease, the big construction company, and they've been one of my partners for 25 years for NASCAR. I had, hopefully a lot of your listeners will know some of these guys, but John Hardigan, ex-CEO of News Limited, Jeff Dixon, the boss of Qantas at the time, John Simon, the Aussie Home Loans will save you, trillionaire, John Brown, Bob Hawke, Richard Longes, David Gonski's business partner, chairman of Investec Bank, Bill Moss, Macquarie Bank. And John Brown helped pull that all together for me. He's been phenomenal for me. I've stayed in contact. John did like the Eels as the club, and we had a bit of a fundraiser for Pricey Ray a couple of months ago, a golf day, and I asked John to come and give a speech. He was one of the most phenomenal speakers I've ever heard, and he's 89 years of age now, and he's I sort of owe him everything that what he sort of did for me after my career, like starting that not-for-profit, and it's now 25 years old, and like I said, Lend-Lease are behind it 100%, and I've got an amazing group of Aboriginal women that are on the board. We're running programs all over the country. We've been in the lives of 80,000 plus Indigenous youth now. So that's going to be sort of my legacy. That's just something I want to be remembered for. It's going to, be nice to be remembered for playing footy, but having an impact on our young kids' lives. And there's a lot going on with them at the moment because of COVID. They're getting into a bit of mischief, and I'm trying to help sort some of that sort of stuff out.
Yeah, well, you've also since gone on, I believe, for about a decade now. You've had the David Liddiard group, also heavily involved in the Indigenous community. Tell us a little about the formation of that, and I guess what you've been able to do with the David Liddiard group.
So again, having a company like Lend-Lease, I was able to meet a very smart businesswoman called Andrea Harms, who's been my business partner for 20 years. And she's based in South Australia, in Glenelg in Adelaide. That's where my head office is, even though I live up on the Gold Coast. I basically had these amazing people, and my mum's one of 10 Aboriginal women, and they got put up the back of the classroom and they were given colouring books. They weren't taught. So my mum's illiterate. She's teaching herself to read and write. I wasn't real crash on at school, but I wagged a fair bit and went when I had to, and got caught a lot. And my old man used to give me a bit of a flogging if I did the wrong thing, which I needed. But I have got a knack about hanging around really smart people to help me get to where I want to be, to help our mob, basically. So Andrea, Lend-Lease were very kind to help launch it. I had a guy, and this is a rugby league podcast, but a guy called Mickey O'Loughlin who played for the Swans, one of the amazing guys. I met him at 17. He sat on my board. He come and spoke at my launch, and Jeff McMullen, who was ex-60 Minutes bloke I'm good friends with, he emceed it, and we launched David Liddiard Group. So we do partnerships with other businesses. So I've got a few companies that I partner with, and it's profit for purpose. So back 25 years ago, I was just trying to raise millions of dollars to run my not-for-profit to support our Indigenous youth, education, employment, have a career, have a good life, buy a house, what most people aspire to do. So one of the programs I've got at the moment is called the Dubbo Opportunity Hub. And those communities in Dubbo, Wellington and Moree, we mentor 1,500 Aboriginal students. We make sure we try and get them to year 12 plus one. So when they finish school, we either get them into university or TAFE or into employment. A lot of my corporates, we've got a driver program where a lot of my very generous corporate partners have given me cars. I've got 7 cars in communities, and volunteers that go out there. You've got to do 120 hours behind the wheel before you get your license now. A lot of our kids are just stealing cars and then up in juvie. So, and we've got an NDIS program. A lot of our mob don't get access to hospitals and doctors and service. So I've been an ambassador for that, for NDIS, for a long time. I sat on the industry skills board, which involves TAFE and university, for 5 years. I was on about 7 different boards. It's now, I've got a company, it's called the David Liddiard Group. It's profit for purpose. So we still work with community. We employ them. We pay them good money. We help them, mentor them into a career. And I'm not ashamed to say I can make money as well at the same time, because, I've got to buy my wife a house, or I'm going to get flogged by it. She won't flog me. But anyway, yeah. So that's my goal.
Well, something I'm sort of interested to hear your take on now, obviously, because you've had such, I guess I could say, an impact in the Indigenous community. Looking at the players who you brought up before, your Latrell Mitchells and your Josh Addo-Carrs, and I guess the Indigenous players playing today, I bring up those 2 in particular because I know that they've been very vocal about their advocacy for the Indigenous community. What's your take on their work? And if you don't mind, share a little bit about what you were able to talk to those guys about when you did have that meeting with them. Was there much talk about, the Indigenous community?
I was a bit starstruck, actually. Josh is a machine. Latrell obviously he's from the same community. I'm from my grandmother's country. So my grandmother's a Biripi and my grandfather's Ngurrumbul Tinga. So Nathan Blacklock, I'm related to Nathan. I speak to him quite regularly. Those guys being amazing Aboriginal role models now can have an impact on our youth, basically. So that's the sort of thing that I did at NASCA. I got high-profile Aboriginal people, not just footy players, but AFL, netball. I ran a netball program. I had Sharon Finnan, OAM, who ran my netball program. She was one of 2 Aboriginal girls to play netball for Australia. I know you would have heard of the Ella brothers who played for Australia in rugby union, Mark, Len and Gary. I'm friends with them boys. Um, we need strong Aboriginal role models to be out in community or talking to our youth, because what I'm hearing is that our Aboriginal youth are going out and committing crime so they can go to juvie because they know they get a warm bed, they get 3 square meals a day, and they can do a course, a TAFE course or whatever, and study in prison. I don't want to see that happen. I want to be able to make sure our kids go to school, are fed, looked after, have it, end up in a career, whatever it is in construction. Like we won a project in Port Augusta a couple of months ago where community, the dust is blowing in from the desert and making a lot of the Aboriginal community sick. So I flew to South Australia, Adelaide, and met with the industry advocate and the Premier, picked up this contract, and then we employed a lot of people in the community on rollers, got them white cards, graders. One Aboriginal fellow just sat under a tree with his lunch and he filled up the water truck that used to go and wet the road down before we tarred it. So now they've got a tarred road. So those are sort of projects that I'm interested in having an impact on making sure our mob are employed and go on to have a career and a future, own a home, be like everybody else in this country, basically. Well, not right now because we're all in COVID, which is hopefully everyone gets vaccinated and we can get out of this spot. But I've been passionate and been doing this stuff for 30 odd years now. So hopefully still got a fair bit to go. And I just love what I do. I'm just so passionate about it.
So to our listeners, David, that want to help support you in what you're doing or follow along with your journey thus far and where it's headed, where is the best place that people can go to, I guess, read up more on what you're doing, or, as I said, be able to support you in your journey?
It's like, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. I'll always answer everybody that sends me messages. I got interviewed on the Oval on the Indigenous round by the ground announcer and another young lady that said if people wanted to donate to your not-for-profit or help, and I said I'll get a cap and walk around and talk to 14,000 people, but probably impossible to do that in COVID now where we're in lockdown, so I can't go back to Sydney for a couple of weeks. But they can look us up on my website that tells it. I don't have a GoFundMe page. This is not about me. This is not money that I keep. This is money that I've been meeting with police commissioners to work out how we can try and work with our mob to make sure that they don't go to juvie or prison, that they have a career, they have a great life, and so some of the communities I've been going to for 20 years is out near Broken Hill called Wilcannia, and their life expectancy out there is 37. So that's if I lived in Wilcannia, I'd be long gone now. But that's people don't know those sort of statistics. So there's our housing issue, overcrowding in housing. I worked with one of the big corporates and set up a tourism business out in Central Desert. My not-for-profit's been going out to Central Australia to visit these remote communities like 4 times a year to sit down with kids. They don't have an economy in these communities. They don't know what a job is or a work ethic. It's just basic stuff that we need to be working with our youth to make sure that they have a brighter future.
Yeah, definitely. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for jumping on today and not only discussing with my listeners the career of David Liddiard in rugby league, but also what you've gone on to do afterwards, which is something that I was really interested in hearing more about. When I asked you to come on, I'd found the David Liddiard group and was having a read through that. And, obviously it's good to sit and chat about rugby league, but, we obviously go on and do stuff afterwards, you guys, the players, and it's great to see what you've been able to do after your career. And I think a lot of the people listening, especially those outside of the Indigenous community who would like to know a bit more, I think this has been a great experience for all of us who are listening to this story. And of course, someone who didn't have a bad rugby league career either, of course. And but
Thanks,
anyway,
Oliver.
Anyway, David,
when we get to catch up, because you're out at Penrith, I've been taking corporates up to the place called Garma up in Arnhem Land, and it's a cultural place where we learn about this for Yolngu people that own the land up there, and the Yothu Yindi Foundation run it, and because of COVID, it's been closed for the last couple of years. But every year, I take a big group of corporate leaders and whoever's interested. So I'll come and grab lunch with you when I'm out at Warrington, visit my parents. I've got your number now. So, mate, thanks for thinking of me. I really appreciate the interview. It's really, really generous of you to have me on. I wasn't anything special, but as it turned out, the career that I'm in and what I'm doing at the moment gives me the best feeling. I just hopefully we can everyone can get through COVID and we can move on with our lives,
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'd say as well, the career that you had in rugby league in a way possibly set you up to be able to have that bit more of an impact in what you're doing now, just because you did have that bit of notoriety in that coming out of your career, and people obviously know who you are. So that I'd say would probably add to it and allow more people to be able to find you. And
it allowed me to get my foot in the door.
Right, yeah.
Because some people go, you're not that David Liddiard that played for the Eels. And I go, yeah, it was a long time ago, but yeah, that was me. And, it was that launched me into doing something that I'm really passionate about, is having an impact on our young kids. So I really appreciate your listeners. Hopefully I haven't bored them to death and they're sleeping through this podcast. But, mate, I really appreciate it. Thanks for thinking of me and having me on. And, look forward to catching up in person when I'm out. I'll touch base with you when you guys get out of lockdown down that way. I'll be visiting my folks and I'll come and say good day and we'll go and grab a bite.
Yeah, no worries. That sounds great. Well, David, thank you so much for jumping on here this afternoon. And I want to thank our listeners who have listened. As I said, please head to the David Liddiard group on Facebook, give it a like, have a look through, and davidliddiardgroup.com to read a bit more about what David's been able to do thus far in the Indigenous community and what he hopes to do in the future. We'll see you later, guys.
Thanks for your time, brother.